fintech, it's important to understand community and to be able to build a startup or develop your business or take your digital asset plan to fruition. It takes a lot of people. And there's really no place better in Asia than Hong Kong for the development of a financial fintech solution here, because we've got great we've got a history of finance, great legal support, beautiful city, great education, everything you could want. So I'm perhaps stealing some of the thunder from our panelists on this next talk, where we'll be talking about the hallmarks of a digital asset and fintech hub, and we'll have Hong Kong and global perspectives. Before I hand over to our moderator, let me just tell you who will be on today's panel. We have Emil Chan. He's the founding chairman of the Association of Cloud and Mobile Computing Professionals and is also an adjunct professor at City University of Hong Kong. King Leung is the head of FinTech at InvestHK. And if you want to, you can listen to him on Crypto Savvy, the podcast from HashKey Group. Sorry for the blatant self-promotion. We also have on the panel Jeffrey Broer, who's the co-director of Founder Institute here in Hong Kong. And running today's session is Adrian Clevenot, VP of Legal at Worldpay. Adrian, over to you.
Thanks, Walter. Appreciate it. So as Walter said, we are very lucky in Hong Kong because we've seen the birth of the digital ecosystem and we've witnessed the success of many homegrown digital asset firms. Now, our industry is maturing and new challenges are appearing. So it's worth taking a step back and assess where we stand. We'll reflect on the current attractiveness of Hong Kong as a digital asset hub and the international landscape. This panel is meant to be interactive, which is why I would encourage all attendees to put in their chat box some questions that we'll address in the second part of our panel in the last 20 minutes. I'll then read those questions and our panelists will answer. So I'll now present the structure for this panel. There are four major parts. The first is to explain what is Hong Kong's competitive edge. The second is what is the collaboration that is happening with other countries. Third, what are any challenges or opportunities ahead? And finally, any advice that the speakers have for someone who would be starting in digital assets or would be switching from traditional finance to this industry. So without further ado, I'll start with the Hong Kong's edge and ask our panelists, what are the areas of digital assets that Hong Kong is currently shining in? Emil?
Okay, so I was a banker. So in the early days, I helped Hong Kong to serve the international bank using Hong Kong as a hub. So lately, Hong Kong as the gateway for China, then we act as the middleman for a long time. So in terms of the digital currency, in my eyes, or the cryptos business, in my eyes, as the world is moving from the traditional business to the digital business, so we have no choice but catching the, in my eyes, maybe the last few wagons to embrace the technology, so that before the world is using fully the digital mean to do business, and Hong Kong will be left behind. And so for Hong Kong at the moment, I think we were the pioneer when China shutting the door, and then a lot of crypto companies came to Hong Kong and started their venture. Unfortunately, our legal system, our regulators are not react fast enough. So a few of them are moving out from Hong Kong. So to us, I think we got to do at a full-fledged And the unregulated side, we are still have some business, but we got to catch up. So I think in my eyes, it's full-fledged. We cannot just start up with B2B or something. We can just start it up, in a short period of time, but eventually we have to adopt everything like the other leading financial centers over the world. So that's my comment.
Jeffrey, how about you? What, in your experience, what areas of crypto or digital assets more globally do you see Hong Kong being a leader in? Do you have any example of success stories? I know you follow your VC. You are also part of the Founder Institute, so you've been fostering many firms. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Adrian, for having me on this panel. Hong Kong, actually, in my opinion, there's no like one particular entrance in the digital assets realm where Hong Kong shines. But because of the fact that Hong Kong has a previous existing ecosystem in fintech and in traditional finance, there are a lot of people choosing Hong Kong as their starting point because of the fact that the founders are located there. So what you see is that a lot of the companies that are now growing, as we know, of course, some of the bigger names out there, Animoca Brands, EMBA, those kind of firms are there because most of the people who started those firms are based in Hong Kong. And that's quite often the reason why bigger names come out of a particular region. So that means that people did not move to Hong Kong because of current or previous regulations when it comes to digital assets, but they came here because of previous ecosystem dynamics. And now the question is, of course, how will we be able to keep them in Hong Kong?
Right, I agree with you. Definitely, that's very topical, and we'll probably touch on this later. King, how about yourself? Like, in your experience, you're at Invest Hong Kong, so your role, really, your remit, is to attract talent in Hong Kong and have this hub be very, very powerful and shine. So tell us more about your review on the industry.
Well, in a nutshell, when we look at a fintech hub, obviously you need to start with the founders. And when you look at the nature of fintech, there's the fin, there's the tech. And in most cases, it always starts from the domain knowledge, particularly on the fin side, in which you are able to identify some pain points in whatever you do. It can be commercial banking, it can be payments, it can be regulatory compliance. So it almost always starts with the domain knowledge. And naturally, you have to reach out and build a team with some tech talents. And based on my observation, Hong Kong do have this international nature, that the team are very international. You might have developers, of course, in Hong Kong, but also you've got some people even from Singapore, from Taiwan, Eastern Europe, in Shenzhen. So I think that in a way is important, but then it's not as important as the person driving it. i.e., from our observation, whether that be wealth tech, insure tech, banking tech, and so on, I think Hong Kong has a natural advantage for being an international financial center, where all these, I think, very established leaders in various sectors within financial services, probably after working in banking for 15, 20 years, they got bored, they're looking for the next challenge, and next thing you know, they have this amazing company that was started. So in summary, Hong Kong does have a good natural advantage for being a fintech hub because of the very nature of us being IFC.
Do you have any examples of success stories you want to give? Like, is there like a firm or two like that are really strike your mind as
yeah, well, of course, I think when you look at the digital asset space, obviously there were many firms that started out from Hong Kong. Of course, now they might be in a different jurisdiction from a license or regulatory standpoint, right? But then you look at the big players, from the FTX, right? To the BitMax, even like Binance. I mean, a lot of these guys like Amber Group. So there are a lot of very capable companies, and many of these folks came from banking backgrounds, and they started off from Hong Kong, and then naturally growing from here to other markets.
Got it. So look, I mean, next thing I want to touch on is really how you guys are enabling this ecosystem. The role of here really we're trying to help digital assets grow. And you can start with that. Like, what's the role of Invest Hong Kong? How do you help the ecosystem?
Well, the short answer is we facilitate business matching or business connections. Now, and the reason why this is important, as opposed to, of course, I think the first thing that comes to mind is for most fintechs is to get clients. The second thing on their mind, get investment. The third, probably getting some kind of government funding, subsidies. Now, but the thing is that while this is a very clear objective, but then how do you go about doing it? If you go about getting a client, let's say a B2B kind of enterprise solution, even in enterprise, in digital assets, you try to go to do it the old-fashioned way. It may take you 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, right? So for us, Invest Hong Kong, we put together this accelerator program called Global Fast Track. Okay. So this year is the 3rd year that we're doing it. Mm-hmm. In essence, we have onboarded over 100 corporates from the banks, asset managers, insurers, and investors, covering from the early stage to late stage, corporate ventures, family offices. So in a way, our goal is to really shrink that lead time to get access to clients, investors, and also other local partners to fast track the way that startup can get on with the business.
You're helping them scale up, basically. Jeffrey, tell us more about your perspective. I know Founder Institute from a very long time ago back in New York. They're an international organization. Tell us more about what you do there, and also other institutions you've been part of.
Okay. For Hong Kong Founder Institute, indeed, we've been active now in Hong Kong for over 7 years. What we help is we help aspiring entrepreneurs to validate their business idea. So that means that we help, for instance, professionals that are at that point in their, I don't know, say in their financial industry, an expert, but have not touched when it comes to entrepreneurship at all, in any of those aspects. So what we help them with is validate the business idea, show them what tools and tips and tricks you need to start a business. Because there's a huge difference being, say, a derivatives trader in a big company where everything is arranged for you, and then if you see a very interesting idea, for instance, in digital assets, and say like, hey, I'm going to start that now. As soon as you step out and you want to start your own business, you have to start buying your own paper clips. You have to start renting your own office. Until even doing your own accounts, etc. So all those aspects we help them with. And then when it comes to Hong Kong, I also in the last 2 years ran the FinTech Innovation Lab Asia Pacific for Accenture, where we help FinTech companies connect with financial institutes through a 3-month very intensive program. A lot of mentorship there, and we work with them towards POCs with those financial institutes. Also there, what you see is indeed Hong Kong has a very strong traditional finance ecosystem. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of fintech companies also in Hong Kong, but also outside that are interested in entering Hong Kong to sell their products, to build their businesses here in Hong Kong. Because when you look at the financial industry, the traditional financial industry, there are, in my opinion, 3 places in the world. That's New York, London, and Hong Kong. Yes, you have other cities that have offices with a lot of financial industry players, but if you look at where the decision-making people are, they're either in London, they're either in New York, or they're in Hong Kong. And you want to be directly talking to the decision makers. And that's why Hong Kong is still a very interesting place to do anything with fintech/digital assets.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's also Hong Kong has a very, very mature capital markets ecosystem. And that's something that is differentiating Hong Kong from a place like Singapore, for example. So I think you're right. It attracts talent and funding. That's super interesting. And also, I would really encourage people to actually go and see on your website what programs you have available, because it's indeed a very big help. Emil, you've done many things, and among those things, you've been a teacher, and you're very knowledgeable in how Hong Kong universities are fostering innovation. Can you tell us more about this? How actually Hong Kong is setting up itself for success in that area?
Yeah. So
again, for digital
assets. Part that Hong Kong is moving from the traditional business to the digital business. We are running out of talent. So I'm playing multiple roles. As you can see, I'm the adjunct professor in the EMBA program, helping the senior management to understand the new type of business, how to run it, understand what the digital asset is, and coming along the central bank digital currency, blah, blah, blah. And on the other hand, I'm helping, say, a Hong Kong university space for the senior or middle management. So that they understand, what actually fintech is, because despite the fact that those are very expert, the expertise in the traditional finance. Over the past 10 years, it seems that the attitude to embrace technology is not up to the level that the other cities like London, like New York is promoting, or particularly Singapore. So part of my job is helping them to transform. So throughout the past 6 years, one of the courses, I really found that there are a lot of traditional workforce managed to find their new job into the giants in the fintech world, like EmergentX, like Crypto.com, like Consensus. I found them, the last fintech week, okay, that King ran. I met quite a few of them. On the other hand, my association, I founded an association called the Cloud and the Association of Cloud and Mobile Computing Professionals, trying to help the computer professionals and the practitioners who understand more about finance, more about the digital economy. So I get a group of people, particularly lately, for those group they are playing in the metaverse arena, the NFT arena, and the digital payment. So I think, in my eyes, Hong Kong is very strong in the traditional finance. But we have to react fast, so that we got to rebuild the digital infrastructure, or particularly the new ecosystem. So with different players. So this is the work I'm doing.
Okay, and actually on this, maybe we'll now switch gears to the second part of this panel, which is how Hong Kong is collaborating with other countries, the international aspect of digital assets, because now it's really a competitive market, right? As you just mentioned, as Jeffrey mentioned about developers, it's hard to hire. It's really a war for talents, and I've seen that in my experiences at Equinix, where I was before Worldpay, where it was very difficult to hire the right engineers, the product managers, analysts, the cybersecurity people, very hard. And then at Worldpay, now I'm at Worldpay, where having people in the payment space who also have an understanding of crypto is pretty also ambitious. So tell us more about the international initiatives that you're seeing. And I know that you're specifically looking at CBDCs. Is there anything happening in this space where Hong Kong is actually taking a leadership role?
Yeah, as I firstly mentioned, Hong Kong is sitting between the East and the West. And then you know that mainland China is the pioneer for the retail type of central bank digital currency. And also, BIS, one of the international office located in Hong Kong, and the innovation hub, pushed, two major projects on the wholesale CBDC clearing, particularly. So Hong Kong, I think, has to rely on this special role or special position that when China roll out the CBDC locally in mainland China, and then when the time that they are stretching their arms to the Belt and Road countries, Hong Kong will play a very important role because that was the existing road on the traditional finance. And then when the international wholesale payment, that SWIFT is not that stable anymore because from time to time, if the country, the politically are unstable, we have to look for Plan B. So I think CBDC or digital assets, particularly the stablecoin business, if we can catch that momentum, and then Hong Kong will be the leader in such a place. No other place except Hong Kong, because we are next to mainland China.
Right, I agree with you. I mean, right now, it's quite it's very topical with the war in Ukraine, digitalization of the economy, how some countries are trying to be more independent. At the same time, we're having the EUN initiative, and then that ties in with the Belt and Road. So for sure, I think Hong Kong has a big role to play in that. And Jeffrey and King, whatever your perspective or experience in any international initiative Hong Kong is part of, or on the other side, like any international initiative that Hong Kong is not part of and that is lagging behind.
Well, if I may, I just want to highlight two things, just briefly. So the first one is the MCBDC bridge, where the HKMA work very closely with BOC, Bank of Thailand, and Bank of National Settlement. So I think for folks who are in the fintech field, they're probably aware of it. So I won't go into a lot of details. But that infrastructure is tested from a sort of technical standpoint, and the actual rollout would really depend on the timing, where the countries feel ready to launch it. And last time I checked, there were something like over 20 banks already signed up to be part of that sort of guinea pig group to try it out, including some mainland Chinese banks, as well as international banks from the HSBC. I think I also saw names of the Goldman there. So typically on the sort of trade finance kind of use cases, this is a good use case to use this new infrastructure.
Right.
Now, so again, since I think the audience probably heard of this already, so I won't go into a lot of details. Any questions, free to fire it up in the chat function. So this is the first bit. Now, but the second one that may not have captured as much publicity is the BSN initiative. Started out from mainland China back in, I think, 2018. Mm-hmm. So essentially, BSN stands for Blockchain Service Network. Mm-hmm. And as I think many of us in the sort of fintech/blockchain world know, there's just so much innovation going on with different chains. Right. But the thing is that most chains, proprietary chains, are not interoperable with other chains. So I think there's this enormous, I guess, opportunity to be had in which if there's some kind of infrastructure that can break down a barrier, that can make the different chains interoperable. Right. You can imagine, I think the sky's the limit. So, and since China has been so proactive in promoting usage of blockchain by President Xi. So some smart people came up with this project called BSN. Now, so the infrastructure has been laid out by China Mobile, and there's a company based out of Beijing called Red Date Technology. They're responsible to do these, I would say, recruitment of the key blockchain players around the world. So the Consensus, the Hyperledger. So by now there are over 40. At least the last time I checked, they might have more already. Over 40 players of different chains to participate in this project. So by riding on that infrastructure to make the different chains interoperable. Now the question is, how does Hong Kong come into the picture? Now, actually, Red Date being appointed to be the entity to drive this internationalization have set up in Hong Kong. And they are here using Hong Kong as one of the international nodes to work with other countries to try to find use cases to leverage on these amazing infrastructure. And the development costs, again, I was just talking to some of the guys in this group. I was told that because of this, I guess by design, they'd like to really bring down the costs. So the cost for developing some kind of blockchain applications has been reduced by between 80 to 90%. So it's an amazing boost in efficiency. Yeah. So again, I think this is still in the early innings of internationalization, but then the groundwork has been laid.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, especially Hong Kong has a very established court system. The rule of law is established here. So having a node in Hong Kong, an international node, is actually a pretty good idea to have. That's because, as we know, blockchain is still has different ways of being created. And in this case, the initiative you're mentioning would be a permission system, and so so that would make it important to have trusted nodes. And I think BSN, what they're doing is quite impressive. They're even working on NFT initiatives in China, so that's something our audience may want to look into. Jeffrey, how about your view about on the international matters here, especially working in an international group?
Yeah, what I see is that most of the initiatives that are being started by commercial companies because of the fact that there are so many of their clients / potential clients in Hong Kong. What I'm a little bit missing is the proactive stance from the Hong Kong government in that sense. So it is, and then again, you're looking at the ecosystem, right? And ecosystems aren't built, ecosystems are grown. And we have in Hong Kong a very mature and grown ecosystem when it comes to financial industries and capital market. The question is, of course, how long can we leverage that? Because even though the ecosystems as we build in Hong Kong here are very robust and aren't taken down very easily, but ecosystems can break down, and we have to be sure that all those items that can break down an ecosystem are being addressed. And for my personal opinion, not all of those items are addressed, and mostly of them come from regulations and government side.
Actually, on this note here, King, what's your interaction with regulators at Invest Hong Kong with the SFC, HKMA, and others?
Well, we work very closely. Well, I guess in the interest of time, I just highlight two ways that we collaborate. First of all, when you look at the Hong Kong FinTech Week, actually it's not just Invest Hong Kong that is the organizer. The other co-organizers are the 4 regulators, including HKMA, SFC, IAA, Insurance Authority, and also the custom departments that gives out the MSO license. Now, so when we work on this major facilitation of the fintech developments across our ecosystem, naturally we work very closely with the regulators. So, and I think the Hong Kong FinTech Week is one good showcase of that. Now, and then the other level that we work closely with regulators is that we wear different hats. So let's just use HKMA as example. For those of us who are in the Hong Kong FinTech ecosystem, you probably heard of the FinTech 2025 strategy published by the HKMA back in June last year. Now, and of the 2025 strategy, there are 5 objectives. The first and foremost, it is all banks go FinTech. Now, it's a great objective. Now, but at the same time, not all the banks have the resources, they have a dedicated venture arm, dedicated innovation team, the budget to try new things. So as a result, while this is a great initiative by HKMA also would welcome any help they can get to help the banks to move them along. And this is where Invest Hong Kong comes in by using our global fast track program, where we're able to connect the fintechs to the various financial institutions, including the mid-sized banks that may not have the in-house innovation team. So in a way, we are kind of there, kind of outsource innovation team by scouting around the world for the greatest technologies, and that can hopefully help them increase revenue, reduce costs and whatnot. And since we are governments, we don't charge the FIs for this kind of service. It's our service to the community to foster this interaction. So this is another way how that while I think our colleagues at HKMA, the regulators set the objective, they push from the top. In a way, Invest Hong Kong are helping the implementation on the ground, if you will.
And how about the links you may or may not have with mainland China? I'm thinking here about, for example, the Greater Bay Area and others.
Well, I think the short answer, again, in the interest of time, we work very closely, of course, with the mainland authorities in Shenzhen and Guangzhou predominantly. Now, but of course, I think even in Shenzhen, because it's a very progressive city, even different districts like Futian, Luohu, Qianhai, right? They have different initiatives too. Now, so at the moment, there are numerous things going on. I'll just highlight 2 things. For Qianhai, there will be some collaboration or closer collaboration between Shanghai and Hong Kong in facilitating the development of fintech. So that can start from simple things like doing events, having some resources on both sides. So for example, if someone from Hong Kong looking for information regarding how to apply for a certain license and not knowing who to call in China, so then we can refer them to our colleagues in Qianhai, and they have dedicated resources to help close the gap. And of course, I think GBA also have different funding schemes and subsidies, and we have basically mapped out the responsible entities. Even if we don't know the exact answers, we know people that do. So this is one way that we have already been working closely with the counterparts in GBA. Now, the other thing that is also quite interesting is that not just Invest Hong Kong, but let's say Science Park. So Science Park also work very closely with, for example, the Futian governments in the area of deep tech. So and that will be involved anything R&D with deep tech. So it's not just fintech, but it can be the big data, AI research, but it can be also biotech, high performance engineering, and so forth. So that's also happening. So in a nutshell, different Hong Kong entities have been working closely with the counterparts in GBA over the past few years.
Got it.
If I can add to that,
sure.
Thank you, King. You touch upon indeed indirectly also one thing, and that's of course talent and resources. And I think also Emil can adjust that. One of the things for an ecosystem like this is of course talent. And a lot of people are talking already about the talent drain in Hong Kong, people are leaving, but even before that already was a challenge, because if you are somebody who has knowledge about digital assets, who has a passion about new technologies, and there are so many startups and new companies doing something in there, and you have the choice of, I don't know, say start working for the HKMA and do something with regulations when it comes to digital assets, or you have the chance to start with a very fancy, big money startup. Then quite often you know where the direction of that choice is going. So also, I don't want to be in the shoes of Hong Kong regulators to be drafting something up when it comes to digital assets, because they just don't have the knowledge and the manpower to do so. So also there, if there are any people, audience listening to this, and they are thinking about this, I think there is a good role for a lot of people with a lot of knowledge within organizations, as the FSTB, as the HKMA, to be there and to help the ecosystem of Hong Kong growing in this area, because those organizations desperately need the knowledge of these new industries.
I have 2 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want
For
to
sure.
echo it. Yeah, it's as Jeffrey mentioned, the issue why Hong Kong government cannot take the lead is that because it's the deficiency of the segregation of duty of the regulators. Say, imagine if you are a startup and you want to get a license, but you don't know where to get a license from, because the product itself, sometimes it looks like a digital asset, and the asset can be a stable coin. And now we find that, it is under the umbrella of HKMA, but not SFC. So the government itself is a structural issue. So I think we got to learn from, say, for example, when UK started the PSD2, it's not the FCA, it's not the regulator to lead that program, it's the CMA, Competition and Market Authority. So in Hong Kong, we do not have such a structure. So if Hong Kong, from the business side, want to attract these talent or international company, we got to find out an entity or a regulator or a department within the government to take the lead. At the moment, we do not have such a structure. So that's why I think in the upcoming couple of years, we got to build up something to take that lead. I think Invest Hong Kong might take that lead, but we have to promote Invest Hong Kong, to higher level, so that Invest Hong Kong can tell the regulators what actually we got to do and create that new ecosystem.
Interesting. By the way, before we continue, I'd like to reiterate to the audience, to the attendees, that if they have any questions, they can just drop them in the chat box. So Emil, you just mentioned that in the UK, the PSD2 was actually initiated by the CMA and then the FCA. So that's actually a pretty good segue into any inspiration that Hong Kong can get from other countries. And so let's take that for the UK. Like, King, do you have any ideas here? Because obviously, we don't want you to be flogging yourself. Hong Kong is doing a great job, but maybe tell us about like other countries that you're looking at, and maybe some models out there.
Well, I think the short answer is there are definitely some great great lessons or great best practices that we can learn from other jurisdictions. I think we look at UK, we look at Switzerland, of course Singapore has done some great work. So we are by and large aware of those things. Now, so in a way that when we look at these kind of best practices, I mean, I guess in a way, well, first of all, I came from the private sector. In fact, I started and ran 3 startups before I joined governments. So naturally, when myself and other colleagues of similar backgrounds looking at this, just like in private sector, you don't just copy your competition. right? Because you want to differentiate and also try to find things that can play to your strength, right? So of course, if we can have like a super regulator that connect everything, it's easier. Now, but then if this is something that's more structural by nature, as Emil rightfully pointed out, now that may not be something that we can address right away. So then, being pragmatic, we just have to think of other ways to solve it. So in a way, the way that we are working together, by the way, Invest Hong Kong, and we call Hong Kong Inc., Invest Hong Kong, Singapore, Science Park, the regulators, we work really close together. So it's just like brothers, okay? Brothers and sisters. So in a way, we try to fill that gap. For example, if a fintech company comes to us, in fact, I think I just had this kind of calls, 2 of these calls this morning. Okay, so they were like, well, we're not sure what kind. And by the way, they are also digital assets related. They're like, well, we're not sure what kind of license we need to get. So what should we do? Now, so the role that we play are twofold. Now, number one, we just explain to them what the different regulators do and their limits. So that for certain license, chances are this is like SFC thing, this is an HMA thing. So we kind of navigate it to make it a little bit simpler. Now, of course, we are not regulators, nor we are lawyers. So in a way, when it comes to more specific advice, we would basically refer these companies to the right people. So for example, I think for those of you who may know Clara Chu, the former head of FinTech and director of licensing at SFC, she has started her own firm because she saw this enormous gap in the market where somebody like her can be of great help. So basically, Clara together with the Big Four and some law firms that we work with, so we kind of know who are the experts out there. So we would connect the firms to the right experts to help them along the way. Now, of course, sometimes that may involve a fee, all right? But then, considering most fintech firms, particularly in digital assets, typically they are quite well funded. So that is not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is whether or not they can get the right answer. And we feel that we have enough experts in this space to offer the right advice. So in a way, well, are we solving problem exactly the same way as other jurisdictions? Probably not. But are we solving problems? And based on what I've been seeing, the answer is yes. But can we do better? Of course, too. So this is basically something that we like to work more closely with private sector stakeholders so that we know what we need to improve. And so hopefully we can fill all these gaps.
Noted. Okay, well, that's really interesting. Jeffrey, do you want to chime in here, or do you want to, or then the next step would be to go into the future of fintech and what's on the horizon? We only have like a few minutes left. That's why I'm asking.
The future of fintech and the future of digital assets.
For Hong Kong.
I think, yeah, it's here to stay. So we have to go around it. We have to find our way. From a professional perspective, I've seen how difficult things can be from close up. Actually, one of the general partners of the VC firm, the crypto VC firm that I'm involved with, was able to be one of the first to get a fully digital license for a fund from the SFC last year. And that means that although there might not be structures there, if with enough determination and with enough knowledge and with enough time, then at that point there are ways to get things done in Hong Kong. I think it's going to be better, but we still have a long way to go. So for the future of Hong Kong when it comes to digital assets, yeah, we have to look at how other countries are doing. We have to be able to stick to our determination to be one of the biggest capital market hubs in the world. And yeah, that might be that we have to change regulations, that we have to invest in knowledge, that we have to invest in talent to come over to Hong Kong to help us out with that.
Interesting. So here what I'm saying in Hong Kong is two things. First, I'm saying some B2B businesses, and for that, for example, HashKey is a great example for custody. And I'm also seeing some B2C business, and you can argue that Animoca in a way is in some sense a B2C business for some gaming. What's your view on the future of Hong Kong being either or both a B2C or B2B hub? Jeffrey, how about you start with this?
Hong Kong itself, of course, for B2C is a very small market, right? The local market of Hong Kong isn't that big. On the other hand, it's not easy to build something in Hong Kong. So if you are able to build something in Hong Kong with the cost structures, with the challenges that are being thrown at you here, there's a big chance you make it all over the world, because you've seen already most of the challenges that can be thrown at you. So if you are able to build something here in Hong Kong, then your growth should be, you will be able to grow outside of Hong Kong. B2B, yes, definitely. Hong Kong is a huge B2B market because of all those traditional financial industries and that whole ecosystem around it. B2C, yeah, you can build something, but you have to very quickly look outside of Hong Kong. Hong Kong, with all the dynamics that we have here, is still a great Southeast Asia and Asia hub. And I think that we can definitely still work on that for now and in the next 10 to 15 years.
Got it. And what advice would you have for someone who would dip their feet in digital assets and try to maybe find the industry within that space that is the most promising? Any advice on the choice or the people they should be connecting with?
Networking is of course very important. So that's why events like this is also very important, to know who's who in the industry. Reach out to them and talk to them. There's already a lot what you can do without quitting your job, without hiring an office, without hiring staff to start building something. You can already do a lot of validation about the direction or the thing that you want to do just by talking, and with minimum of capital cost. Yeah. So that's usually the first step, and get the right people around you. There's a lot of hype when it comes to digital assets, and then I use digital asset as an umbrella for a lot of the other terms that are going around on this day also. But you have to be able to shift the hype from stable and things that have merit in the future also. So that's also one of the things that we at the VC firm are looking at, is not per definition the hypes that are there, but also things that are going to be a great bridge between traditional financial industries and digital assets.
Understood. Great. Well, Emil and King, I'd like to have your closing remarks as well on this, on the advice you would be giving to new joiners in the industry. Emil, I'd like to hear that from you first.
2 minutes. So looking ahead, say Hong Kong has a small population size, so we got to think beyond the boundary. So metaverse will be the way to go. So why metaverse? You know, looking at end of last year, Seoul in Korea and Shanghai in China, the city has already laid down their plan, about metaverse. So it's part of the smart city. So if we cannot take the lead by the regulator are not taking the lead to create new business. So we got to let the city to find out, what are the businesses, how shall we move, from the traditional to the digital economy. So I think for the people who come to Hong Kong or the local companies in Hong Kong, they have to think about the development or urge the government at least to do all the smart city blueprint with the metaverse initiative. Otherwise, then we will be also again lagging behind, from the developing or the other competitors. So I think look ahead. Don't limit your footprint locally in Hong Kong on B2B, and you still have to consider to join that metaverse magnitude. So this is my opinion.
Great, the metaverse. I agree with that as well. King.
Yes, I agree with what the other two speakers said, so I won't overlap. Perhaps I'd like to come at it from a macro perspective. Now, obviously, I think we are all aware that we probably have not seen the last QE. There will, if we have a crystal ball, look ahead, there will be more QEs down the road, where when things go a bit off track again. So naturally, the whole sort of inflation or depreciation of currency, this trend likely will persist. Now, and why do I start with that? And that's because when you look at just the different value propositions by some fintech players internationally, you may have come across some pitches about using some kind of portal. You can get access to the Monet, right? The Monet arts, fine arts. They don't have to get the Monet arts from like a Christie or Sotheby, but you can do it just fingertips on an app. Now this is already here, right? Now, so as a result, as we look ahead, there will be more interests. If we were to look at a crystal ball, there should be more interest on hard assets. They can be, who knows, right? Physical gold bullion, which may not be easy to buy and store. But then there's a, for example, like a UK fintech company that specializes in doing the physical gold, but on an app, okay? So, and then the fine arts, and the list goes on. So basically, when we have the supply of solutions that can help us to protect our wealth. So that's the supply side. On the demand side, I think the one thing that the other two speakers mentioned, that Hong Kong is great for B2B because of the small population, not so much for B2C. I guess I would agree, but to an extent, there's a caveat. And the caveat is, it depends on what segment you're talking about on B2C. For example, last year, middle part of last year, there was a survey done by WealthX. It's an American wealth data provider, in which they have looked at all the major cities around the world. And Hong Kong ranked number 5 in the world of having the highest density of, I think they call this like very high net worth people, which is another layer above a high net worth. So 5, number 1 in Asia. The other 4 are 2 in the US and 2 in Switzerland. And Hong Kong is number 1 in Asia, having the highest density of high net worth. And why do I bring this up is because now if we need to look ahead about how fintech may evolve, now, of course, the smart money would go to where money can be made. So you have this massive concentration of wealth. So if I were somebody, some smart people think about the next generation of wealth preservation solution, well, I think Hong Kong is a good place to start. Plus, I think with yield being record low, QE is going to be persistent. Well, I guess I think the future in a way is not hard to predict how this is going to play out.
Good. Well, I'd like to end this panel on this optimistic note. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining this panel. Thanks King, Emil, and Jeffrey for providing your insights. That was really interesting. I'm sure people can just hit you up on LinkedIn to connect further. For the attendees, thank you very much for joining. And at 4 p.m. there will be another panel this time on gaming, on blockchain games. And I invite you to stay tuned to join that panel. So thank you very much, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Okay.